Our speaker tonight is already a qualified speaker in District 12. He's also vying to be a qualified speaker in District 100. With 15 years of Toastmasters experience, our speaker tonight is no stranger to the podium. Or is it the lectern? He is a construction industry consultant, a father of two, and has been happily married for over 2 decades. Today, our speaker is preparing for District 100 Speakers Bureau audition next month. He invites us to reflect on a deeply personal question. With his speech title, Does the Past Create Who You Are? Join me in welcoming distinguished Toastmaster, past district director, qualified speaker, Jeremyha Lyle.
Thank you so much, Mr. Co-Chair, Mr. Chair, fellow Toastmasters, and guests. Some time ago, I was just browsing online like the most of us do, and I came across a quote, and I wanted to read it to you. It's from Imana Magriera, and it says in her book, Secrets of the Heart, "Our past is what molds us into the person we are today. It does not define us." And as I read that quote, I thought a lot. I started thinking a little bit about my past. And my past, I actually had a chance to be able to visit. About 10 years ago, I took a road trip. Me and the family, we loaded up in my car, and off we went. We drove up into Utah, came across, we saw everything that you would see if you just flew over it, most of us. We call them the flyover states. That's what we did. We came into Little America, which is a little tiny town. We ended up in Michigan. Then we ended up driving down, and we got into Oklahoma. And as we got into Oklahoma, we saw some family there, and we took a road trip. And that road trip led us through a little tiny town, population of maybe 300. Then to go a little bit farther down, and you cross the bridge. And just across the bridge, over to your right, is a cemetery where all of my family's buried. Go a little bit farther down, and all of a sudden, the asphalt stops. You come across a dirt road, and about a quarter mile down the dirt road, you make a right. And whenever you make that right, the first thing you see is an old decrepit house. And in that old decrepit house, roof's collapsed, porch is gone. Just past the house, you actually see a bus. Just past the bus, you see a river. And a little bit farther out, you see old well derricks. That, my friends, is where my family was from. That well derrick was something my great-grandfather helped run. That bus that I was talking about was actually the bus that my grandmother slept in whenever my grandfather served our country in the Army. Those hills and that river is where my family would catch their food. Then you get to the house where my Uncle Ed and Aunt 1L lived. We haven't been there in 60 years. But I got to tell you, being there was something. Because my family was sharecroppers. After my great-grandfather left the rigs, we became sharecroppers. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, basically you're plowing the fields. And we were literally dirt poor. And the town I was telling you about is Ryan, Oklahoma. If you blink, you're going to pass it. And if you stop, you're probably going to not still run into somebody because it is nobody there. But inside Ryan is a bank. And in that bank is probably one of the most important people in my family's history. You see, My name is Jeremyha Raish Aaron Lyle. Jeremyha was after Jeremiah Johnson. Aaron was the name my mother wanted me to have. Raish was the banker. Raish was back then what they called the people's banker. If you needed money for your crops, if you needed money to feed your family, you went to Raish. Raish would loan you the money off a handshake. There was no contracts, there was no terms. You came back whenever you could. In all honesty, if it wasn't for Raish, we would have been a lot worse off. So from there, my family moved. After my grandfather got back from the army, they moved. We went to Florida, we went to Texas, we went all over the place. But we finally landed in Corona, California. 1964, to be exact, is whenever we finally landed in Corona. My grandfather opened up a gardening business. We mowed yards, trimmed trees, we did anything and everything. And in our family, that's what you did. From the time you were born, as soon as you could walk, you were pushing a lawnmower, you were holding a rake, a shovel, anything. I spent my entire childhood, every day after school, mowing yards. I would, during the summer, work from sun up to sundown, mowing the yards, trimming trees, doing whatever I could for the kids that I was going to school, because that's how I bought my school clothes coming up that next year. You see, my family, school wasn't important. My grandmother had nothing more than a 6th grade education. My grandfather barely made it past that. My mother, she ended up getting her GED because she was pregnant with my sister whenever she was in high school. My father got his GED in the Marine Corps. My sister, she graduated high school, but never made it past community college. Actually, never even graduated community college. I was the first one in my family to actually go to college and walk out with a degree and cross the stage. Now, I tell you this story not because I'm somebody special. Most of you know me, you know I'm not that special in life. But I tell you this story because I didn't have to be what my family was. I had to be something different. That's how I felt. I didn't have to mow yards because I wanted to go to college. I wanted to work in an office. I wanted to grow old. I wanted to be able to do all of that instead of just doing what we always did. But now think, how many people do you know in your life get stuck in those molds? They get stuck in that mold of, this is what we do. This is how we do it. A lot of times you'll hear them say, well, I do this because, well, my family's always done that. Or I can't do this because, well, we don't have those kinds of opportunities. Everybody know somebody like that? I know plenty of people like that. But too often we actually put ourselves in those molds. And in all honesty, those molds are almost like prisons. We create our own little 9x6 prison cell around us every single day. A lot of times. We see people that put themselves in there and they never find a way out because they're afraid of just making that extra little step. Now, I'm not the only one that's ever had this struggle or ever done this. I want to tell you about somebody else. Somebody else you may have heard of. His name was Stan Tukey Williams. Does anybody know Stan Tukey Williams? I think it's Stan. Just check my notes here. Yeah, Stanley Tukey Williams. Anybody know? You do. Stanley Tukey Williams in 1971 was a gangbanger. He was on the streets in LA, one of the most famous gangs he was the founder of. You've probably heard of them, the Crips. Founded the Crips, ran that life for about 10 years. In 1981, he got sentenced to death for multiple murders. He chose a life. That's what he grew up in. That was the life he lived. And he ended up going to prison for it. And he spent the rest of his life actually in prison, from 1981 until the day he died. But what did he do while he was in prison? He started to read. He started to read. He started to write. And he decided he wanted to change. He started writing children's books to get kids to not be in gangs. He started pushing and trying to find ways to be able to build bridges between the gangs. The very gang that he found, he was advocating against. Because he knows what that life was. You see, he was in a box. Literally in a box. But inside that box, he was changing lives. Before he died, he was nominated for multiple Nobel Peace Prizes. Put up for a Nobel Peace Prize on literacy. All because he started writing, telling stories. But more importantly, he changed his legacy. He changed the path. He didn't say, I'm only going to be in this little box. I'm going to do something more. Well, yes, we remember him for what he did on the streets in LA. Most people remember him for what he did while he was in prison. Or let's talk about somebody else. Let's talk about Tyler Perry. Anybody know Tyler Perry? We all know Tyler Perry, right? Who doesn't love Medea, right? I mean, Medea's Family Christmas is the best thing ever. But Tyler Perry grew up in Louisiana. He was a victim of severe sexual abuse and physical abuse by his father. All the way through his childhood, he endured that. And finally, as he got older, it wasn't for him. So he decided to write his way out. He started writing. He actually wrote stories about what happened to him. And he ended up making a play. And the play was called, I Can Do Bad All by Myself. It wasn't that good. It didn't take off. But he kept writing. He lived in his car. He struggled through it. But he kept writing to change his legacy. Finally, it took off. Now he's very successful. He's been able to change his family's trajectory and his own personal trajectory because he didn't have to be in that box that he was as a kid. Those two people I just told you about, they could have very easily stayed within their realm. They could have stayed in that little tiny box. But they didn't. They found something else. They found a way to be able to change their family's legacy. They found a way to be able to change their legacy. As we started, I told you about that quote. And we talked a lot about what we put people in boxes. But how many of us are in our own prisons?
Recording in progress.
And how many of us are now going to start the recording? But more importantly, how many of us are in our own prisons? How many of us have stayed in our own boxes because it's just what we do? We're afraid to change. We're afraid to make those steps because we're afraid that that's just not what we do. Too often in life, we sit like that, when we stay like that. And as I wrap up, I encourage each of you today to get out of that box. Get out of that 9x6 little tiny square. Do something different. Push yourself a little farther. Stretch yourself a little bit. Because while it may be a small change today, it's the change for your future and the change for your family future that really matters. So are you willing to make that change? Are you willing to be the person you are supposed to be? And are you brave enough to be the person that you should be? Mr. Toastmaster.